The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was in the library, cramming for my organic chemistry final. My phone buzzed with a notification from the scholarship office, and my blood ran cold as I read the subject line. Urgent. Academic performance review required. My hands trembled as I opened it. Dear Ms. Sarah Coleman, we have received concerning documentation regarding your academic performance. Please report to the Financial Aid Office immediately with your parents to discuss the continuation of your merit scholarship. Time-sensitive matter. I stared at the screen, confused. My grades were perfect. I'd maintained a 4.0 GPA for 3 straight years. This had to be a mistake. But the "with your parents" part made my stomach churn. Why would they need my parents there? I practically ran across campus to the Financial Aid building, my backpack bouncing against my spine. As I rounded the corner to the office, I stopped dead. Through the glass doors, I could see them, my parents, sitting in the waiting area, dressed in their Sunday best. My mother was examining her nails with studied casualness. My father was reading something on his phone, a slight smirk playing at his lips. They weren't supposed to be here. They lived 3 hours away and hadn't visited once since dropping me off freshman year. Sarah, my mother's voice was syrupy sweet as I entered. There you are, sweetheart. We were so worried when the school called us. The school hadn't called them. I knew that immediately, which meant they had called the school. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, honey, my father said, standing and putting his arm around my shoulders in a gesture that probably looked paternal to observers, but felt like a python's grip to me. We're just here to help sort out this little situation. Before I could respond, Mrs. Davidson, the scholarship coordinator, appeared in the doorway. Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, Sarah. Please, come in. The office was cramped, made smaller by the presence of several other people. Mrs. Davidson sat behind her desk, flanked by 2 other administrators I didn't recognize. But in the corner, almost hidden behind a filing cabinet, sat Professor Williams, my biochemistry professor and academic advisor. Please have a seat, Mrs. Davidson said, her face grave. We need to discuss some serious concerns about Sarah's academic performance. I opened my mouth to speak, but my mother cut me off. We're just devastated, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she produced from nowhere. We had no idea Sarah was struggling so badly. Struggling? I said. I'm not. Denial won't help you now, Sarah, my father interrupted, his voice stern. We've seen the transcripts. Mrs. Davidson cleared her throat and pulled out a folder. Yes, the transcripts your parents provided are concerning. According to these documents, you failed every class this semester. Multiple F's across the board. She laid the papers out on the desk, and I leaned forward, my mind reeling. There they were, official-looking transcripts with my name, student ID, and a row of F's where my A's should have been. These are fake, I said immediately. These are completely fake. I have straight A's. I can show you my actual grades right now on the student portal. Sarah, my mother's voice turned sharp. Stop lying. This is exactly the behavior that got you into this mess. The drinking, the parties, the boys. What? I stared at her in disbelief. I don't drink. I spend every weekend in the library. My father shook his head sadly. This is what addicts do, Mrs. Davidson. They lie, even when confronted with evidence. We've been trying to get her help, but she refuses to come home where we can monitor her properly. That's when it clicked. This was about control. It had always been about control. 3 years ago, when I'd gotten the full scholarship to study biochemistry, they'd been furious. They'd wanted me to stay home, to go to the community college where my mother worked, to live under their roof and their rules forever. The scholarship had been my escape route, and they'd been trying to drag me back ever since. I think we should discuss. Mrs. Davidson began, but Professor Williams suddenly stood up. Actually, he said, pulling out his laptop, I'd like to share something interesting. Everyone turned to look at him. He was a quiet man, usually content to observe from the sidelines, but there was something different about his expression now. What's this about, Professor? Mrs. Davidson asked. Well, Professor Williams said, opening his laptop and connecting it to the room's display screen, I have a rather unusual habit. Call it professorial paranoia, but I BCC myself on every single grade submission, every email to the registrar, every academic document I file. My parents exchanged a quick glance. I also record all my office hours, with student permission, of course, for quality assurance, he continued. So imagine my surprise when I saw these alleged transcripts showing Miss Coleman failing my class, when I have documented evidence of her A+ performance. The screen lit up with email after email, all showing my actual grades, timestamps, official submissions, a perfect record. This must be a mistake, my mother stammered. We got these transcripts directly from the registrar's office. Did you? Professor Williams asked mildly, because I have here an email from the registrar stating they've had no contact with you whatsoever. In fact, they flag any parent requests for transcripts of students over 18 without written consent. My father's face was turning red. How dare you imply? I'm not implying anything, Professor Williams said. I'm stating facts. But there's more. He clicked to a new screen. Miss Coleman, did you know your parents visited campus last week? I shook my head, stunned. Security footage, he explained, showing a grainy video. Here they are entering the computer lab in the library. And here. He clicked again. It's the login record showing someone accessed the transcript template files from that exact computer at that exact time. Files that are supposedly secure but can be found if someone knows where to look. Say, if one of them works at a community college with similar systems. My mother's face had gone pale. Mrs. Davidson leaned forward. Are you suggesting these transcripts were forged? I'm not suggesting anything, Professor Williams repeated. But I did take the liberty of inviting someone else to this meeting. The door opened and a campus security officer entered, along with a woman in a suit. This is Detective Morrison from the City Police Department, the officer said. She specializes in fraud cases. Fraud? My father stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're trying to help our daughter. By submitting falsified documents to a federal financial aid office, Detective Morrison asked, That's a felony, Mr. Coleman. Fraud involving federal education funds can result in up to 5 years in prison and $20,000 in fines. We did. My mother started. Additionally, Professor Williams continued, still calm, I have here a recording from Miss Coleman's visit to my office hours last week, where she mentioned her parents had been pressuring her to leave school. Sarah, you gave me permission to record that session, correct? I nodded, remembering. I've been crying, telling him about their constant calls, their threats, their attempts to sabotage my education. He played a short clip where my voice, shaky with tears, described how my parents had threatened to find a way to force me home if I didn't leave voluntarily. That's taken out of context, my father shouted. Is it? Professor Williams asked. Because I also have emails from Ms. Coleman's other professors all confirming her excellent performance. Dr. Martinez in organic chemistry says she's the top student. Professor Thompson in physics calls her exceptional. Should I continue? The room was silent except for the hum of the laptop. Here's what I think happened, Detective Morrison said, pulling out a notepad. You wanted your daughter to come home. When she refused, you decided to force the issue by making her lose her scholarship. You came to campus, accessed the computer systems, probably using Mrs. Coleman's community college credentials, and created false transcripts. Then you submitted them to the financial aid office, hoping Sarah would have no choice but to return home once her funding was cut. You can't prove that, my mother said, but her voice was weak. Actually, the detective said, we can. Digital forensics is quite advanced these days. Every document created leaves a trail. Every login is recorded. And forging academic documents is a serious crime. Professor Williams turned to me. Sarah, I want you to know that all of your actual professors have been notified of this situation. We've all submitted letters to the scholarship committee confirming your real academic standing. Your scholarship is safe. I felt tears streaming down my face, relief, anger, vindication all mixing together. As for you, Detective Morrison turned to my parents, you have 2 choices. We can handle this criminally, which means arrests, trials, and likely jail time. Or we can handle this through a civil agreement where you cease all contact with Sarah, pay restitution for the time and resources wasted on this investigation, and undergo mandatory counseling. You can't stop us from seeing our daughter. My mother shrieked. Actually, I said, finding my voice at last, I can. I'm filing for a restraining order. Today. Sarah, please, my father's tone changed, becoming wheedling. We only wanted what was best for you. You don't understand the world. No, I cut him off. You don't understand. I'm not your property. I'm not your prisoner. I'm a grown woman with a 4.0 GPA, a full scholarship, and a future in biochemical research. And I'm done with both of you. Mrs. Davidson, who had been silent through most of this, finally spoke. Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, I'm going to have to ask you to leave campus immediately. You're now banned from all university property. Security will escort you out. As my parents were led away, my mother shooting me one last venomous look, Professor Williams put a gentle hand on my shoulder. Are you all right? He asked. Why did you do all this? I asked him. The BCCs, the recordings. He smiled sadly. I had a student once, years ago, brilliant girl, pre-med. Her family sabotaged her education to keep her under their control. By the time we figured out what was happening, it was too late. She'd lost her scholarship and had to drop out. I swore I'd never let it happen again. Mrs. Davidson apologized profusely for the ordeal and assured me my scholarship was secure. The detective gave me information about filing a restraining order and victim services on campus. As I left the office, my phone buzzed with texts from my parents, threats, pleas, accusations. I blocked both numbers without reading them all. That night, I sat in my dorm room looking at my real transcripts on my laptop. All A's, just as they should be. My roommate brought me tea and sat with me while I processed everything. They really thought they could get away with it, I said, still in disbelief. Narcissists always do, she replied. But you had something they didn't count on, a professor who gave a damn. The next day, I changed my major. I added a minor in criminal justice to my biochemistry degree. Professor Williams wrote me a recommendation letter for a summer internship with the FBI's Forensic Science Division. My parents took the civil agreement probably because their lawyer told them they'd definitely lose in court. I haven't spoken to them since. Sometimes I wonder if they ever really loved me or if I was just another thing they needed to control. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. I'm too busy studying, researching, and building the life they tried to steal from me. And Professor Williams? He still BCCs himself on everything. He also started teaching a seminar on recognizing and documenting academic fraud. The first slide of his presentation is always the same. Trust but verify. And always keep receipts. The restraining order was approved without challenge. Turns out judges don't look kindly on parents who commit federal fraud to control their adult children. My parents had to pay $10,000 in restitution and complete 200 hours of community service. I graduated summa cum laude. Professor Williams hooded me at the ceremony, standing in for the family who wasn't there. As I walked across that stage, I thought about how differently things could have gone if he hadn't been watching, documenting, protecting. Now I work in forensic biochemistry, helping solve crimes through science, and yes, I BCC myself on everything too. Because Professor Williams was right, always keep receipts. You never know when someone will try to rewrite your story. But with the right evidence, the truth always wins in the end.